brand awareness on the internet. That's something that, you know, in the 21st century, that's where everything is going to. So we all acknowledge the huge potential in online marketing, but most of us, small business owners, don't know where to even start. Would you agree that's true? Larger corporations hire experts to help them market their business online, but most of us cannot afford it. And many times we think that we cannot afford it. Our speaker today, Richard, has taught many brand marketing, CRM management, and follow-up, SEO, video marketing, social media for over a decade. He had given over 2,000 presentations while working for MoveThat Inc., educating the real estate community all over the country. So get your pens on turbo and please help me welcome Richard McDonald.
Thank you all for joining me, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys today. It's wonderful. So thank you for having me. Let me get the projector on here. Okay. So just to give you guys a heads up, the presentation I'm going to deliver in 25 minutes is usually delivered in about an hour and 25 minutes. So everybody, buckle your seatbelts.
Less is more.
Yeah, less is more. Well, we'll see how that goes. Let's see if we can click over here and make the mention pop up. So the idea of the presentation today is not to learn everything, because your head would quite simply explode. But has anybody been on the phone with a tech support kid and they made you feel about this big? Okay. What I want to do is educate you guys to the point where you're speaking the language at least. So when you do get on the phone with the person who's actually going to do the muckety-muck, you're at least talking their language. And when you do that, you reach out and you're in their little ecosystem, their attitude tends to change. Has anybody noticed that when you're actually speaking the language of a tech support person? So in other words, I want to kind of demystify some of the things that seem to make web presence very, very complicated. Okay, I'm going to get you getting this on both screens here. I can have it on my screen, or I can have it on the big screen. What do you think?
Big screen.
Big screen. Okay. So, web presence, I mean, it should create an emotional experience. It should create value. Having a really well-developed and a well-thought-out website, it's like bringing a guest into your home. If the guest feels comfortable, and you offer them a beverage and they're sitting down on a beautiful, comfortable couch, what's their takeaway going to be in a short amount of time? I think I'm going to come back. Do you think a website should be any different? Absolutely. You ever been to a website where there's 250 links and like a pop-up window wanting you to buy something? How do you feel about those? You're gone really quickly. And the danger online is, would you say that the consumer has a whole lot of choice that doesn't involve you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, a whole lot. So we have to be really careful how we treat that landscape. But again, it should be an emotional experience. It should offer value, make people feel comfortable. It should connect people with your brand, be it video, be it anything that you've got in terms of menu choice. Just make it feel balanced, and a modern design also really helps as well. I'm going to run through about 15 things, or as many things as I can get through before you guys kick me off stage and do whatever you do next. If there are any questions along the way, please feel free to ask, because a lot of these things will be foreign concept. I won't have time to go into depth with everything, so maybe just get down the big headings. First thing you guys want to do is take stock. You want to check your own current website. How many of you guys are small business owners that have a website? I'm shocked if there is a small business owner in the room that doesn't have a small website that's not a drug dealer, right? Like, what are you selling if you don't have a website? I'm wondering. There is a free analytic online called the Website Grader. The address is marketing.grader.com. All you got to do is feed in your website. It's going to give it a grade of 0 to 100. Now, typically, most templated websites I see will come out in the 15 to 30 range. Once you start putting some effort into it, and some search engine optimization in it, it'll start being in the 50 to 70. I've seen a handful in the country that are over 80, but most are going to be in the 20 to 40 range. But what it'll do is, it will actually go through every section of your website and tell you how to fix it. You've done this wrong, you've done this wrong, you've done this wrong. Now I could go online and spend 30 minutes on somebody's website and go through everything, but I want you guys to feed in your own websites when you get home and then take the time. And you'd be amazed what's wrong with your website. You never knew. So there's what I see, but then there's what Google sees, for example. Okay? A lot of this has to do with the stuff on the back end that you may not be aware of. Yes, ma'am?
Could you repeat
The URL
Yeah.
is, let me just go back, it's marketing. marketing.grader.com.
Thank you.
And it's run by a company called HubSpot that does a lot of this kind of stuff for free. They got tons of free analytics. So that's the first one. Well, why do you want to do this? What's the point of putting all this time and energy into a website? Well, gee whiz, as it turns out, they're fairly popular. People look for things online. If you look at the trajectory of the world internet growth, this 1650 represents millions or billions. I think it's 1.6 billion people are online as of 2010. Anybody want to take a guess where that graph goes if we went from 13 to 2014? Probably in the same kind of trajectory, right? Would you say that's a direction that's worth kind of being behind? You say you want to be in that group? Yeah, absolutely. Internet adoption in the United States alone. 85% of everybody over the age of 18 is online. Now, as soon as we add a few more variables like running water and roofs and kind of like being in this area in Santa Clara County, what do you think this number goes to? Virtually 100%. Virtually 100%. This is everywhere. But I'll take the 85, right? I take 51% if I've got to make a choice. That's a pretty solid number. How many Google searches are there? In 2012, there were 5 billion Google searches every single day. Is that a small number? Gee, I don't want to be part of that. Now, this stuff didn't come out of nowhere, right? Would you say that there are a few folks paying the cost who are not in this code? Who do you think's paying the price? Where's this getting created and sucked, right? Where are they getting moved from? Well, whose expense? Anyone want to take a stab? US Postal Service is one big one, right? Does anybody know the numbers on the US Postal Service loss in the last quarter alone? It's not pretty. 3.2 billion a quarter. Does that mean people are reading a lot more? What do you guys do with junk mail? Or mail in general? Bills in one hand, the rest. Just straight out. Doesn't even get looked at. It's like kryptonite. So there are other ways to market other than the internet, but would you say this is one of the ones that's working or not working? Pretty obvious, right? It's not pretty. I've come from the real estate community, which tends to be about a decade behind everyone, and they are the kings of spending money in areas where people aren't looking. Park benches, bus stops, billboards, magnets. They have a great way of separating themselves from their product and their expertise than any other community I've ever seen. Shopping cart trolleys, like, what is it that you say you do? But this is a prime example. This just flat out isn't working. Consumers are not looking in that direction. Billboards. Oh, I'm going to advertise on a billboard. You know how those guys measure success? Like how many vehicles pass the billboard? You think people are paying attention to signage? Next time you guys drive down the road, check out how many people are on their phones in their vehicle. They're not paying attention to the road. You really think they're looking at signage? Okay. So it's pretty clear that the web is the place to be. But how do you do it, right? How do you do it? There are millions, if not billions of websites, and there are many reasons as to why somebody's number 1 and somebody's number 10 million. I want to demystify some of that, okay? I want to take the mystery out of that and help you guys out. Now the other thing, before we jump into specifics, does it matter where I am on the internet? Number 1 or number 10 million? Do you guys know what the numbers are? Anyone have a clue as to how much better it is to be number 1 versus 2 versus 3?
Yeah.
If you are in the number 1 spot on a Google search, you are getting 42% of all the clicks. Does that sound like a pretty good place to be?
Yeah.
Now if we jump to the 2 spot, we're getting about 12% of the clicks. That's okay. The 3 spot, 8.5%. 6% for the number 4 spot, and so on and so forth. Now there's what's called above the fold and beneath the fold. Does anybody know what I mean by above the fold on a search engine result? So just give me 2 seconds on above the fold.
What you see in your window first is above the fold.
That's right. If I do a search for anything, it's what I see without hitting one button. As soon as you have to start scrolling, what do you think happens to the click-through rate on that first site beneath the fold?
Fail.
Drops to virtually nothing. Page 2, page 5, virtually nothing. Yes, ma'am, you had a question? Somebody have a question? I saw a hand pop up. Sorry. All right. So you can see there is a real premium to be in these positions, but that does not happen automatically, okay? So I want to spend the next couple of minutes on sharing with you guys some of the simple things that you can do to help yourself out, and then some of them may be more complicated things that you can do to also help yourself. The number 1 thing that I can recommend is get a Google account. because the next 10 things I'm going to show you are predicated on having a Google account that allow a ton of free access to some really neat analytical tools. How many of you guys use Gmail anyway? So you guys already have a Google account, but that's just the tip of the iceberg, the Gmail. There's 10 or 15 other things that we can do from having a Google account. The first thing that you want to do as a small business owner in your Google account is go into something called Google Places. How many of you guys have heard of Google Places? You might often hear that a lot of search engine optimization is local or local search. Google Places involves local search. How many of you guys have seen a screen like this? Okay. Do you guys know what makes this kind of stuff possible? Those map placements? What's in our smartphones that was not in phones a decade ago? Yeah, right, the geo. So a lot of times when you do a search for a restaurant or a something, it's going to connect to the closest geographic location. So a lot of times you'll see this stuff pop up before anything. How much do you think it costs to be in one of these spaces?
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Do you know how long it takes?
5 minutes.
It takes about 5 minutes of data entry, but then what they do is they send you a postcard. Google will send you a postcard with the tracking codes. When you get it, you go back to the site and verify that it's actually your business. Yes, ma'am?
What's the difference between places and local?
It's a similar thing, but Google, they change names with a lot of this stuff. But Google Places will guarantee that you're really in there on that top shelf thing, and this is huge with mobile, okay? You guys realize a lot of searching now people tend to do from something the size of their hand. They're not, on the big laptop anymore or even a small computer. And when you're in Google Places, that's really going to help out a lot because you'll pop to the top of that search. But if you run a local business, you absolutely want to go into Google Places, fill out your information because you can outpace a lot of competitors that way if they're not in there. The other thing you'll notice in there are rankings, okay? People tend to trust ratings and rankings before they do anything. Watch a movie, buy a vehicle, buy a television. So it kind of lets you know where your business is, okay? Just something else I want to draw to your attention while we're back on this page. It's kind of hard to see, and I apologize for I'm not a PowerPoint expert, right? I'm basically doing screenshots and talking. Can anybody see what this says right here? It starts with a Y. Yelp. Does anybody use Yelp? Yelp is very similar to Google Places in that you can load in your business. It comes up incredibly high on local search because it's pegged to the geographic location of your phone, okay? So if somebody's searching for a restaurant in New York City, you're not going to pop up. But if somebody's in and around Campbell or Saratoga and they search for a restaurant, these are the guys that will pop up. Some people have had negative experiences with Yelp. I'm not sure if anybody has in this room where maybe your competitor goes on the site and just trashes your ranking, that kind of thing. I've heard other things that Yelp actually tries to extort money out of business owners. If your ranking gets too good, they'll knock you down. Then you'll get this call, the next day, hey, we can help you out. But I would rather be there than not be there, particularly as it's free.
Is that true about the extortion?
I've heard that from, you told me the story the other day, right? Yeah. I have a friend he owns a gym in Southern California in LA, Beverly Hills, and he got all these incredible rankings, shot right to the top. Then they pushed him down, and then the next day he got a call from the Yelp business guys saying, oh yeah, we can help you get back up. Like, what? Doesn't make sense.
Class action lawsuit going on there.
I would still rather be there than not be there, particularly because it gets such a high ranking for free most of the time. Now, the next tool I want to share with you. Google's the #1 search engine on the planet, bar none. No one else is close. Does anybody know what the #2 search engine is?
YouTube.
YouTube. Who owns YouTube?
Google.
Google. What do you think the value of that is? You ever heard the expression, eat your own dog food? Google tends to eat its own dog food. So anything that it does or it recommends, guess what? It's also going to get a fairly high ranking. But YouTube is an incredible way to get your message out there and be found. I worked with this YouTube video here. I've got some clients of mine who are in the city at Sotheby's. They do $300 million of real estate per year. Most brokerages don't do $300 million a year. These two guys do $300 million. So they have a videographer from VH1 that does their videos. It's really high, top-notch stuff. So they gave me the video, and I did the optimization. And right now it's up to 7,000 hits in 1 year, which isn't too bad. But I know every trick in the book about SEO. There is no quicker way to shoot to #1 on Google than to put something in video. Now, why else do you think video is popular? I do a search for anything on the planet and there's 10 results on a page and one has a play button. Which one do you think I'm going to hit? By and large, we're just lazy. Why on earth would I want to read something when I can hit a play button? But the metrics on video are incredible. The dwell time is longer. What does that mean? People watch longer, right? The attention span on written text is not that great unless it's really well written. But as soon as we get to video, throw that out the window. People will watch 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. And also, it can explain your product a lot better. Just when we see and hear at the same time, the comprehension level goes up. People are more likely to share, etc. So there's some really good numbers involved when we talk about video. The other thing about video is anyone can do it. How many of you have a smartphone? Anyone can do it. We don't need Academy Award-winning performance on YouTube, do we? It doesn't have to be outstanding. There's some pretty average videos on YouTube that get 10 million hits. Just a matter of what it is that you're pushing out there. So that's a good one. The other thing I would absolutely recommend signing up to is Google+. Google+ is like Google's version of Facebook. Now, in all honesty, I don't use Google+ like I would use Facebook, right? I use Facebook like it's, you know, like I'm a crazy man. I'm probably on it 10 hours a day kind of thing, checking up on what my friends are doing on the East Coast. But because Google says use it, it's really not a bad idea. But it's their ability to share pictures and content. It's also part of just having your Google account. If you ever create content online, you want to push it into your Google+ account. And it will receive probably an unnaturally high ranking, almost like a YouTube video sometimes shares an unnaturally high ranking. When I threw that video up on YouTube, it popped to #1 in about 2 hours. That's almost impossible. And I don't mean a paid ad, I mean organic. But when you put something in Google+, you can often see a similar result. Now, just some of the things that you'll get from a Google+ account and abilities. You guys have seen the +1 button, I'm sure, on a lot of websites. It's the equivalent of like. It's what Google's like button is to Facebook. Yes, ma'am?
What was the keyword you were ranking for?
I'm sorry?
What was the keyword you were ranking
On the YouTube video. I think I did San Francisco properties, but then I also did the address of the house, which people tend to look at directly. So it's 3481 Washington Street.
What was your tag?
The tag doesn't matter in YouTube at all. The key to YouTube is the title. That's the 99% of it. That's getting a little more technical than we've gone through right now. Meta tags are kind of, they don't really count anymore. They really know what I mean by meta tags. On the back end of a website, you can type in what your content's supposed to be about, but it was abused. People would put in like real estate 55,000 times over. Right now, Google looks at your content, title, something called alt tags that goes behind images and so forth. But yeah, meta tags are kind of, yes sir?
You mentioned if you're going to post anything, to make sure you push it to your Google.
I'll get to how you do that.
Yeah, what is that? Yeah, how you do that?
Yeah, I'll get to that. Because ultimately, you want to share content like all over the place. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, but I don't have 900 hours to do that, right? We'll get to that part. Very good question. So you'll also see there's a share button, +1 button, and then you can actually put this badge on your website so people can hit G+ on your business. And that's all just basically, those are signals, right, to the search engines that you're in play. When people start sharing your stuff, that's where Google says, these guys are important. You guys are having a good time so far? I'm not blowing you out of anybody's brains. The other thing that you want to do as part of your Google account is do what's called authorship, okay? Authorship guarantees authenticity, that the content you're throwing online is actually yours, linked to your G+ account. The main thing that Google authorship does is if you ever post content online, it's going to have your picture and a link to your website. Whereas if you just throw content up there, it'll just be a link. Do people like pictures? Yep. Yes, they like pictures. Yes, they like video. So anything you can do to get an image or even just a caption of a company logo, that's what you want to have, and that's why you want Google authorship. Okay, now there's 200 different algorithms that Google uses to determine who's #1 and who's number 10 million. Another one of them are links, okay? Link building. How many links are there on all other people's websites pointing into your website? Google has a thing called a robot. It kind of scans the internet looking for stuff. So if it sees a link to your company on someone else's website, it's like, that doesn't live here, and draws a line from that site right back to yours. Let me put it in human terms and take it back to technology terms. Let's say I'm thinking about using a building contractor, and he's saying he's really good and all this kind of stuff. And then Larry Ellison joins us in the conversation and opens up